Let's talk about, well, our country's finances. Doesn't get enough attention, including from the current Prime Minister Keir Starmer, never hear Keir, over the NATO summit in Turkey right now, or indeed the incoming one on 20th July. Yet to hear what any of Andy Burnham's plans are going to be regarding how he's going to deal with the public finances, which are, and it's not a matter of political opinion here, they are in a terrible mess. Well, let's talk about all this with Jamie Jenkins, former statistician with the Office for National Statistics. Good morning to you.
Morning, Julia. We might have to have a whip round to stop paying some of this debt down.
Well, I think we are, aren't we? I mean, look, first of all, how big is our debt? And tell us, what has the Office for Budget Responsibility, the independent body hired by the government to sort of keep an eye on finances, what have they had to say today?
Yeah, so when we're looking at our debt, Julia, we normally look at it as a percentage of GDP. And for people, we always talk about GDP, but some people I speak to in the street don't even know what it is. So basically, GDP is the value of all the goods and services produced in the UK. So it gives you a sense of the size of the UK economy.
It's our economy, basically the size of our economy,
Yeah, pretty much the size of the economy. And then we look at how much is our current debt as a percentage of that GDP. And it's currently running around 95%, which is extremely high in kind of historical terms. You normally have only seen it this high generally when you've had the kind of the First World War and the Second World War.
Yeah.
And remarkably, what we've seen over the last 2 decades, Julia, is experienced one of the largest increases across the developed world in relation to the G7. So this isn't just a problem of, say, the last couple of years.
It's not just lockdown related.
No, it's not just lockdown. And Rachel Reeves herself, Julia, she's borrowed £274 billion since the general election. Staggering amounts of money.
Quite a lot. But it's basically, this is us living beyond our means. We are just basically, we're living on payday loans. I mean, given the rate of interest we're paying on a lot of that debt, paying more than 110 billion every year just on the interest, not even paying off the debt. But basically, we're basically dealing with a payday lender who's going to come round with the tattoos going, it's time to pay up any moment now, right?
Yeah, so the debt's approaching £3 trillion, and if you just take May alone, so you've talked 110 billion. That's kind of our annual debt payment. So it's a bit like, yeah, you owe money. They come back to you and say you owe us money, and you've got to pay us back some of the interest that you've got. You can't afford this. You keep borrowing money. We're in this spiral of borrowing more money.
We're borrowing to pay the debt, which is again payday lender stuff. So the Office of Budget Responsibility, they have said that our finances, our public finances, are on an unsustainable path because we keep doing this. And the figure they've given, and again, £120 billion, they basically say, is what is going to have to sort of come off the borrowing or come off the spending, or a combination of the two, for us to get even vaguely back on track and not end up, what, are we talking about 1970s territory, going cap in hand to the IMF asking for a bailout?
Well, it could be worse. So they're just talking about we might need to put taxes up or cut spending to keep the public sector debt as 95% of GDP. They've done some projections, obviously modelling, you get different numbers, but they've done projections, Julie, that shows in the next 50 years, it could get up to 300% of GDP, just looking at the current fiscal path.
But at that point, people, I mean, the bond markets, they don't want to buy our debt, surely, at that point, because they'll worry that we're not going to be able to pay it back.
Oh, clearly, and the UK's got that baked into its interest rate at the moment, in the fact that we've got such high levels of debt, we don't seem to have it under control. You're right to say Burnham hasn't come out to say what he's planning on doing, and what the government's doing, Julia, is just taxing us more but continuing to spend more. We've had data out this morning on the 2-child cap benefit being lifted. That's another £2 billion going there. That's going to rise to £3 billion by 2030-31. And the remarkable
there's basically 500,000 households are now getting, and again, it's what, £3,500 extra a year for each child over 2 that they of the first 2 they have, because they're not working or not working hard enough, and that's why they need the money. I mean, that's why.
And that is the problem. We've been asked to fund more and more family decisions. I'm a believer that you should pay for your own children. We do give some.
Jamie, that will never catch on. You fascist.
I know, I'm fascist. But the remarkable thing in all of this, Julia, is this tax and spend. So because the government, there's 3 ways out of this. The first one is you can obviously tax more. But if you look at the OBR data, if you take tax as a percentage of GDP, that was around 37% just before the COVID period. It's forecast by the end of 2030-31 to go up to 43%. We're already maxing out the tax. You can cut spending. This government's got no plan to do that. And you can see the triple lock is probably an area that the government needs to look at, but nobody will touch it.
That's a huge part of the welfare. It's what, 300 billion annual welfare bill, but a huge part of that is pensions. But even getting rid of the triple lock, I mean, you're not going to be saving much of that, are you?
Now, you've got to do a radical kind of solution from this. But the other one that you could do, Julia, which is the third part, is grow the economy, because it's all as a percentage of GDP.
Why did no one think of that?
Yeah, so if the economy can grow, and the way to grow the economy, which this government's clearly got no business acumen in there, is if you give money to people, they will spend it. So rather than keep putting taxes up and then just dishing it out in the unproductive part of the economy, we're seeing private sector continuing to decline, public sector continuing to grow. If you want to grow the tax base, you've got to grow the economy, and that's what the government needs to do.
So,
I think
so not taxing employers for hiring more staff, and not penalising people, and not perhaps thinking, as Andy Burnham apparently does, that moving number 10 on a Wednesday and a Thursday to Manchester and building more council houses with what labour I don't know and what materials I don't know is the answer to the economic woes of this country. And we've seen nothing from him yet. I mean, we don't even who his Chancellor's going to be. God forbid it's Ed Miliband, who's with the net zero agenda, is, I mean, absolutely stifling any chance of growth in this country. You can't do AI, you can't bring back manufacturing jobs, you can't do anything if you've got the most expensive energy in the industrialised world by a long way. I mean, there is no plan.
There's been no plan for the last 2 years. Morgan McSweeney's already admitted that, I think, in the last week. There's been no plan for the last 2 years. Burnham's got no plan, and you're right to call out on the show today, Julia. All those MPs in Parliament, and none of them are common enough to be the Prime Minister. That's the state that this government's in. And the OBR report, people should wake up, because literally everybody who've got children, you're basically passing on the debt to them.
This is it.
And it's not responsible.
Because people have this idea, they're like, oh, well, we won't put taxes up, we'll borrow more. You're just putting taxes up in future on yourself and mostly on young people, on your children. I mean, that's the reality, isn't it? JB Jenkins, thank you so much. A, you know your stuff, and B, you can explain it so us simpletons can understand it. We so appreciate that. Former statistician with the ONS.